Hello and welcome to another edition of the X106 podcast. I'm Ryan Elliot, and I'm going to be joined by Evan Brown as always today. We're going to be talking a little bit of college football, both this past week and this coming week, and we're also going to talk some NFL. So here we go on the X106 podcast. And Evan, an interesting week of college football last week. Let's start with pick your game of the week.
Right off the bat, I said it last week. I'm going to go ahead and go with it again. I thought it was going to be a close game. This team definitely plays to their opponents, and last week their opponent was number 4 Penn State. The game ended up being 21-19 Penn State, as we all figured Penn State was going to win. But Iowa really surprised me. I didn't think they were going to make it that close of a game. I thought it would be a close and hard-fought game, but I never would have expected that, they'd have the potential to win. And that last-second touchdown, I think by Laquan Barkley, if I'm not mistaken, really sealed the deal. And obviously, one of the best players in the nation. He's going to run all over any team. But, you got props to Iowa for, trying to contain him as best they could, and almost came out with a win.
Yeah, I agree with you there that that was a fantastic football game. As you mentioned, Saquon Barkley is probably at the top of a lot of Heisman lists right now, including, I believe, ESPN's Heisman list currently. The other game that I saw that was pretty interesting was Florida-Kentucky. Florida driving down the field toward the end of the game to score the game-winning what ended up being the game-winning touchdown on just a broken play, a play that Kentucky totally neglected the wide receiver on the outside and an easy touchdown. Kentucky had a chance to win it at the end of the game, but a bad holding penalty took them out of field goal range and just didn't happen. So Florida-Kentucky was my pick for game of the week, just a knockdown, drag out between two solid SEC teams there. So we talked game of the week. Now, Evan, tell me a little bit about what team impressed you the most in week 4 of college football?
Well, it was probably not a game that, a lot of people would talk about as, but I'm just going to go ahead and say the TCU-Oklahoma State game. Oklahoma State's been riding a high, those first three victories pretty handily. Then they go in and at home against the number 16 ranked TCU team, and the TCU just almost dismantled them. They lost by 13, which isn't a whole lot, but when you're ranked 10 spots higher than a team, you're expected to at least compete a little bit better and especially win the game. And Mason Rudolph, one of the NCAA's best quarterbacks, I'd say at this point, definitely top 5. I expected him to do a lot more than he did. 14 points in the fourth quarter. They tried their best to come back, but it didn't happen, obviously.
Yeah, so it would be safe to say that TCU would be the team that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, forgot to mention that. Yeah, TCU is definitely a team to watch. Beating a top 10 team, it raised a lot of eyebrows, I believe, especially mine. So just for me, they're a team to watch. Maybe not going to be one of those, the sleeper picks for the playoff coming out of the Big 12, but anything can happen.
Right. So the team that impressed me the most this week had to have been Georgia. They came out against the 17th-ranked Mississippi State team that absolutely blew LSU off of the field last week at home in Starkville. Came into Sanford Stadium at Georgia and fell flat on their face in front of this Georgia offense. Jake Fromm threw 12 passes the entire game and had 201 passing yards and 2 touchdowns for Georgia. Nick Chubb, 15 carries, 81 yards, and 2 scores. This Georgia offense is better than I think a lot of people thought it would be without Jacob Eason, and that has been the saving grace for Georgia. As we know their defense is going to be good. They're an SEC defense, and people expect that out of them, but boy, they came out and played just a solid football game against a Mississippi State team that just a week earlier absolutely picked apart LSU. So that is my most impressive team of the week.
Yeah, you go ahead. You know what? Changed my mind.
So now I think we're going to move to least impressive team of the week. Who did you watch this week that you thought, ugh, that team may not be what I thought they were?
Well, I feel like it's a recurring theme. We always talk about Mizzou I'm just going to kind of leave that one where it is. LSU, I really expected to, bounce back after that loss to Mississippi State. They did. They won by 9, but also they played a lackluster Syracuse team that I feel like definitely doesn't compete on the same level as LSU should. They were at home, so you would think, they would have, taken care of them a little bit more handily. 35-26. It's kind of a score I didn't expect. LSU normally has a pretty lockdown defense. I didn't expect to see 26 points on the board by Syracuse. So I think LSU definitely has, a few issues to work out there. I think they will get them worked out. I think you will definitely see them climb back up in the rankings later in this season. Just it didn't impress me that much. Definitely expected another outcome.
Well, the other thing that I saw was Syracuse quarterback Derek Dungy threw 52 passes in that game.
Yeah.
LSU doesn't hardly allow 52 plays most of the time. Their defense gets off the field pretty quick, and they're a possession-oriented team a lot of the time. So I was surprised to see that Dungy threw that many passes and 265 yards and a touchdown as well. So a solid game for him. But, LSU, there might be some underlying issues going on there. The team that impressed me the least was third-ranked Oklahoma. I don't know if the news has gotten around to everybody, but Baylor's a really bad football team.
0-4.
I expected Baylor to be fairly bad because of the issues they've had off the field and the lack of a real head coach and things of that nature, but they played to within 8 of Oklahoma. I think the Oklahoma defense needs to take a step back and look at what's going on here. This is a team that lost to Baylor is a team that lost to Liberty, that lost to Texas San Antonio, and lost handily to Duke. Okay, and they played Oklahoma to within 8. I get it was a home, and I get, maybe the Big 12, Baylor might step up a little bit, but Oklahoma's got to take a step back and look at this defense, because I know most of the Big 12 doesn't play defense, but if they come into a game against LSU and play the way they did against Baylor, they're going to get torched in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
And so that was the team that impressed me the least this week, even though they're 4-0 and ranked number 3, was the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, and you talk about another team. I'm going back to the playing to their opponent's level. They cannot do that. If you're ranked top 4, you got to show that you are meant to be in that top 4 ranking. Top 4 is the potential for those guys to be in that college football playoff. And you said it. Posting up numbers like that against a team that was 0-3, but you know what I mean. You cannot be doing that. I mean, a lot of people are going to go back to this game late in the season when they're making those decisions on who gets in and who gets out of the college football playoff, and they'll be looking for that game. But I will say, if they keep that leveled out just to one game, this is the only one game that where they should have won handily, and they barely squeezed by. If that's the only game that happens, I think they'll see it tossed by the wayside. But if this keeps happening, if it becomes an issue that they just keep having a reoccurring issue every week, obviously it's not going to happen every week, but it's definitely something to watch for, and I think the committees will be heavily aware of this Week 4 game.
I agree. So as we take a look at right now, they haven't released the college football playoff rankings yet. They're not going to do that until, I believe, week 6 or 7, maybe even later than that, maybe week 8. But the thing that I'm looking at is if you take the combined votes and points of the AP Top 25 in the coaches poll, you get the 4 teams that are right now in. You look at Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Penn State. Alabama would play Penn State, Clemson would play Oklahoma, and that would be your college football playoff. So I guess what I'm getting toward here is, some of the other teams, USC, Washington, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, those are all teams that right now are in the conversation that you look at and go, okay, these teams are undefeated in power conferences. Each one of them has a pretty good win, at least one. Michigan over Florida, Georgia over Mississippi State, TCU obviously over Oklahoma State. Washington really doesn't have one yet, but they're going to play USC later this year. USC's got a win over Stanford. So, they each have a win over quality opponents. So who, if any, outside of that top 10 is your sleeper pick to make the college football playoff at the end of the year?
Boy, you're really giving it to me tough today. It's still kind of early for me. Didn't wake up too early today. Anyway, I am going to stick with that TCU pick. And that, we talk about sleeper, but I feel like TCU is definitely a major sleeper. They haven't been on a stage that huge. The college football playoffs definitely pretty new, and they'll be new to it if they can get there. But if they keep playing the way they have, I don't see any reason why they can't get there. Another team that I will say probably beat Louisville. I don't know how far outside of the top 10 they are just because of the dynamic.
They're 17 in the AP poll,
17?
18 in the coaches poll right now.
They're one of those teams. I mean, they've got Lamar Jackson, defending Heisman winner. So, I mean, if you got that, you got a pretty good chance to get back to that big stage.
Yeah, I like the TCU pick. Louisville's going to have a lot happen in order to get there, but there is a chance if, let's say, Virginia Tech beats Clemson and then Louisville beats Virginia Tech, that's something that could spark a big-time difference in that one. Some of the teams that I'm looking at, as I just mentioned, Virginia Tech. If Virginia Tech can beat Clemson, and let's see, I'm not exactly sure when that game takes place.
Next week.
Is it next week?
Next week, 8 p.m.
That Virginia Tech
7.
takes on Clemson. So that will be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, it's this coming week, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's Clemson at Virginia Tech, 7:00 on ABC from Lane Stadium in Blacksburg. So they get Clemson at home. That will be the test for both of those teams. I think the winner of that is probably a lock into the college football playoff if they can win out. So if Virginia Tech can take down Clemson this week, they've got a really good chance. So that's one of my sleeper teams. The other one would be Wisconsin. Wisconsin in I don't want to say a down Big Ten, but outside of Penn State, there's a lot of question marks. Michigan is a team that could make the playoff. Wisconsin's going to have to beat both Michigan and Penn State because they would play Michigan in the regular season, and I think they would play Penn State in the Big Ten championship if that were the case. And so they're going to have to beat both of them to have a chance. But Wisconsin would be one of those teams with a chance, and really outside of that, you look at the rest of the top 25, and there's not a whole lot of teams that would have that much of a chance outside of that top 10. You look at Miami, I don't think they have the firepower to beat both Virginia Tech and Clemson. An undefeated Washington State team that they play USC this week, so that might be the test for them. Oh, yeah. But so we've been mentioning a couple of games that are going on this week. Let's just take a full look at this week. Give me some of the games that you are specifically interested in this week.
Well, you kind of touched on it a second ago. The USC-Washington State game. It's Washington State at home. It's one of those matchups where you're really questioning how Sam Darnold can do. They are ranked number 5, but I feel like that is the most potential for a trap game this entire week. You look at Clemson, Virginia Tech. Those are probably neck and neck. But Washington State, I really haven't seen a whole lot of weaknesses this whole season. Granted, we played 4 weeks. It's not a huge sample size, but man, they have looked good. So have UFC, and it's going to be one of those neck and neck, possibly shootout kind of games. Washington State's defense is pretty good this year. They got a lot of playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, especially in that secondary. So I think it's going to be a test for the captain for USC and the rest of the team, Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and you look at that game is actually happening Friday night, September 29th at 9:30 on ESPN. That's from Martin Stadium in Pullman, Washington, the home of the Washington State Cougars. You look at those two teams, and we see two top-tier quarterbacks in this one. Sam Darnold, as you mentioned, and a guy, Luke Falk, at Washington State that's got almost 1,400 passing yards through 4 games. He's thrown 14 touchdowns and 1 interception. This is a guy that takes care of the football and makes the smart passes, and it's worked out for him this year. And so I think you look for here, this may be a who can score more game. USC's got a good defense, but Washington State's got a just as good offense. So whichever defense can make more stops in this one overall is going to win this game. I don't think either of these teams are going to shoot themselves in the foot. I don't think either of these teams are going to hurt themselves that much. If a defense gives them an opening, they will score, both of these offenses. So that's going to be the big thing, is which defense can play a little bit better. Another game that I look at is Mississippi State-Auburn.
Yeah.
This 5 o'clock from Jordan-Hare Stadium on ESPN. Mississippi State, a team, as we talked about, that went into Sanford Stadium at Georgia and just flat out got beat. So this is 3 weeks in a row that they've played a top 15 opponent. They played 12th ranked LSU 2 weeks ago, beat them 37-7. They played 11th ranked Georgia last week, lost 31-3. Now they get 13th ranked Auburn at Jordan-Hare, which
tough.
Historically, potentially maybe outside of Baton Rouge and Bear Bryant and Bear Bryant Stadium, or Bryant Denny, I guess, Stadium in Alabama. Outside of those two venues, Jordan-Hare is probably the most difficult place to play in all of the all of the SEC.
Oh yeah.
It's a crazy, crazy crowd. You know, we've talked about some of the crazy things that have happened over the past couple of years. There was the miracle at Jordan-Hare, the game over Georgia with the tipped pass and the catch for the touchdown. Then, of course, the kick six and the Iron Bowl happened at Jordan-Hare as well. So that's a tough place to play for any team. And I think Mississippi State's going in there looking to rebound from a tough loss to Georgia and ruin some more playoff hopes. They ruined LSU's playoff hopes 2 weeks ago, looking to ruin Auburn's this week. And I think Auburn's coming in with that weird offense that nobody seems to understand yet, and they may come in and just protect their home field the way that Georgia did. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in that game. A couple of very good defenses, and so that'll be a fun game to watch as well. Outside of that, there's a lot of good games this week. Not a whole lot of marquee matchups. We mentioned Clemson, Virginia Tech. We mentioned USC, Washington State. Outside of that, Georgia at Tennessee is going to be a good game. That 2:30 on CBS. That's from Neyland Stadium, so you're looking at Georgia going into Tennessee, a tough team that almost downed Florida, which yet to be determined whether or not that's an accomplishment. But we'll see. Outside of that, not a whole lot else going on as far as ranked opponents. San Diego State is at home against Northern Illinois, a team that gave Nebraska everything they could handle. Washington is at Oregon State. Whole lot of offense in that one. Outside of that, Oklahoma State at Texas Tech. Various other ranked teams against less than stellar opponents. Louisville's a 47.5-point favorite over Murray State at home. Wisconsin at home against Northwestern. South Florida heading into a not very good East Carolina team. Vanderbilt, Florida could be interesting. That's at 11 a.m. at Ben Hill Griffith in Gainesville, but that's, Vanderbilt's a team that hasn't quite proven what they can do, but they look like an okay team in the SEC this year, so that might be a tough matchup for Florida. But so that, I think, will wrap up our discussion on NCAA football, and we are on to the NFL on the X106 podcast. And you're listening to the X106 podcast, and now we will begin our discussion on the NFL this past week, week 3 of the NFL season. Seems like it just started yesterday, and now all of a sudden we're gearing up for week 4. So take me through some of your favorite games of this week, Evan.
Well, I mean, you can't ignore that Thursday night game. The LA Rams go into San Francisco 49ers house and just basically have a shootout. The Rams end up winning 41-39, and I really didn't expect either of these teams to put up more than 24 points. And I don't know if that was because the offenses were just horrible, or not, the defenses were just horrible, or the offenses just took over that entire game. And obviously, you look at it, 41-39, you got to go with the offense. But I haven't said this in a while, and the LA Rams really look like they have an offense to be really worried about. Todd Gurley had 3 first half touchdowns. If you're a fantasy owner of him, you're really happy about that. The 49ers didn't play an awful game. the longest time in that game, I thought the Niners were going to win, and the Rams were able to, take it out, or come out with a win, I guess. And that game honestly was probably one of my favorite games all week. I mean, you look at the Titans Seahawks game. I'm pretty sure we predicted the Seahawks to win that last week, and 33-27, the Titans were able to take that and kind of dismantle that Seahawks secondary.
Yeah. You mentioned Rams 49ers. The Rams, they're 2-1. Those two wins have come against the 49ers and the Colts.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. They look like they could have a decent football team this year that, they could record a winning season for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
But their 2 wins are over the 49ers and the Colts, the bottom of the barrel in the NFL right now. So that could be just who they've played showing, or it could be that they are a decent football team. So we'll see that.
I'd almost like to think it's both. You always need some confidence boosters, especially early in the season. And, they're getting that. And so, I mean, it's not an awful thing that they're playing these bad teams and beating them. But who knows? The confidence goes a long way in the NFL. It's a long season. If you can, get open to some early wins and, the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm. I agree. One of the other good games that we saw was Giants-Eagles. The Giants nearly coming away with their first win of the year. Who expected the New York Giants to be 0-3 right now?
Yeah, and the Jets are 1-2.
They are, and the Giants, given they've played 3 difficult opponents.
Agreed.
But I don't know that anybody expected with a close to healthy now Odell Beckham that they'd be 0-3 at this point. But the Eagles have shown that they're a team to be reckoned with. They are, they gave the Chiefs all they could handle last week. Mm-hmm. They got a big win over the Redskins in week 1. And now coming in and Jake Elliott, their kicker, just drilling a 61-yard field goal to win the game as time expired. And that wasn't the only game this week. There were a lot of really good games. You talk about Steelers-Bears went into overtime. Falcons-Lions, a close game. That one went down to the wire. Falcons able to stop the Lions short of the goal line on the last play of the game. Packers-Bengals went to overtime. So and Titans-Seahawks, as you mentioned, was a very good game as well. The Seahawks nearly they had a chance to come back and take that one, just couldn't quite get it done. But
and don't forget about the 50th comeback win for Tom Brady, beating the Texans 36-33.
Yeah,
and I think there was 20 seconds left on the clock when they scored that last touchdown to go up 3.
Yeah, it was. That was a barn burner as well. I thought, a lot of people thought, okay, the Texans are going to come away with one. They're going to drop the Patriots to 1-2.
Yeah,
questions are going to start being asked, but Brady did it again, as he tends to do.
Yeah.
So we'll do the same kind of thing we did with college football. What team impressed you the most this week?
Got to say the Saints. They really just, made Cam Newton a non-factor in the game. Pretty sure he had 2 picks. So I'm going to click on the stats here, but I never expected the Saints to put up 34 points against a defense like the Carolina Panthers have, especially without Brandon Cooks. Granted, they have Michael Thomas, and he's a great player as it is. Let's see, Cam Newton, he had 0 touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown, a couple picks. 17 for 26 isn't bad, but only 167 yards. And the Saints haven't had a good defense since the bounty thing. That's the last thing I could think, and it took that for them to get a good defense going. I think Mark Ingram was pretty impressive. Not really crazy impressive. 14 for 56. He had some really great plays. He broke out a couple times. Kamara, their rookie they drafted, had a touchdown, broke off, or I can't really remember how long of a run it was, but it was definitely, I think, around 20 yards. He just bolted down the right sideline. No one could touch him. I think the Panthers may have some issues on the defensive side of the ball, and especially with Kelvin Benjamin going out on the offense and Greg Olsen out for the year as well. I think that the Panthers have a few things to figure out, and I think they may need a midseason trade to get them back to where they need to be. might be a little too early to determine that, but we'll see. But all in all, the Saints played a very good game. Drew Brees only had 7 incompletions, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns. Great game for Drew Brees.
Yeah, I like the Saints. I think that they played a really good game this week. I'm looking at the early game on Sunday, the 8:30 a.m. kickoff from London, Jaguars-Ravens. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they need to just move to London.
I think so.
They are 5-1 in London as a franchise, and the people in London must think Blake Bortles is an incredible quarterback. He had another great game in London, and the Jaguars dismantled the Ravens 44-7. They're 2-1, and
they didn't get that last touchdown, or Ravens didn't score until late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. The Jaguars, the Ravens aren't a bad football team.
No,
they're not a great football team, but. So that was an impressive matchup there and an impressive game from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They impressed me the most this week. Evan, who impressed you the least this week? Who were you disappointed with?
The Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bears have one of the worst offenses in the league. Mike Glennon highlighting that offense, and Jordan Howard. Tariq Cohen has kind of come out and has been made a star, but with the team with lackluster stars on that team, I don't want to say it's easy because it's not easy for me, but it's easy for these guys to kind of break out and develop a role in that offense. And I really was very disappointed in the Steelers defense. I think if you're playing the Bears and one of these teams you don't expect to have a great game, the Bears are going to run the ball. That's kind of their only plus side of an offense. I think you really need a game plan for that, and I was really just disappointed at the offensive showing that the Steelers had. Granted, they were at the Bears. Bears at Soldier Field has been a difficult place to play. Maybe not in the last couple of years. With the Bears going 2-14 last year. But yeah, I thought Ben Roethlisberger didn't look very, very good. Some of his throws were off. Antonio Brown, I believe, still had a good game. But there's a lot of weapons on that offensive side of the ball, and I don't think they utilized them well enough. You look at rushing. Le'Veon Bell had 15 rushes, 61 yards, and a touchdown. It's 4 yards a carry. It's not awful. Antonio Brown just went off. He averaged 11 yards a catch. 10 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. I think you really got to give it to him more. And I was just disappointed with it. Mike Glennon actually had an all right game. They didn't throw a whole lot. 15 for 22, 101 yards, and a touchdown. I just feel like you got a game plan for a team that has had success running the ball in the past 2 weeks. They knew they were going to run the ball. I think they need to stack that line a little bit more. That's just my opinion. I'd be running blitzes on Madden if it was me. But
yeah, this is an interesting football team. My pick, the Miami Dolphins. Frustrating game for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Jay Cutler is pretty much all you have to say. He had 26 for 44, 220 yards and a touchdown. It just isn't. It isn't what they're looking for.
No.
It's not been good. Jay had 11 carries for 16 yards. Yeah. This team, this is a football team. The entire team had 30 yards rushing. That's not good. That's not good at all against the New York Jets, led by Josh McCown. Mm-hmm. This isn't, this is not a good New York Jets team, and the Dolphins thought they found something. They had a great year from J.E. last year. They thought maybe Jay Cutler was the answer, which was a mistake, and it just didn't happen. They allowed 2 big-time pass plays for Josh McCown, including one that went 69 yards for a touchdown. 20-6 against the New York Jets, who have been bottom of the barrel. Everybody thought they would be bottom of the barrel. Yeah. And so that, to me, was the most disappointing team of the week. So we would be remiss if we didn't talk about there are 2 undefeated teams left in the NFL,
and they're both red.
One of them is the Atlanta Falcons, who have a brand new stadium and right now are playing great. You know, they had a tough game against the Bears week 1, who I think are better than a lot of people think they are. Maybe not that, like, they're not good enough to beat the Steelers normally, but
yeah.
Maybe they are. They beat the Detroit Lions last week. They have come out and beaten quality opponents in Detroit and Green Bay in the last 2 weeks, and they're 3-0. The other 3-0 team in the NFL is to the surprise of everybody outside of the state of Missouri.
Yep.
The Kansas City Chiefs, and I guess portions of the state of Kansas as well. But the Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated. They're 3-0, and I don't think anybody outside of Chiefs fans expected that.
They didn't. I'll tell you what, I don't know why. I mean, I guess the fact that, they got rid of, Jeremy Maclin, they're just like, wow, they're their number 1 receiver. What are they doing? So things are wrong in Kansas City. Andy Reid knows what he's doing. He's arguably probably the second best coach in the NFL at this point. I would argue to say that. Number 1, obviously, still being Bill Belichick.
Oh, man, I thought you were going Rex Ryan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the one. But no, I mean, the Chiefs have, I believe, outscored opponents in the fourth quarter 42-10, something that has not been done in a while, at least as long as I've been a Chiefs fan. I can't tell you as many times as I can count. I don't know. It's just, one of those things I'm really happy to see, especially, beating the Chargers, who, I mean, we've won, I believe, 7 or 8 games in a row against the Chargers.
I think that was a 7. So I think it was 7 in a row and 12 in a row against division opponents.
Yeah, and, the Chiefs have just really blown everyone out of the water, especially, obviously you mentioned it being one of the 2 teams that are undefeated. Hard test against the Washington Redskins next week, though. But I'm sure we're going to get to that here in a little bit.
Right. And this, I think there are a few reasons why people would sleep on the Kansas City Chiefs. One, as you mentioned, they got rid of their number 1 receiver. Their top guy, the guy that everybody thought was going to lead this offense as far as from a receiving standpoint. Also, they cut Jamal Charles, who was the guy. He's the all-time leading rusher in Kansas City Chiefs history. He's the guy. And they lost Spencer Ware to injury. And so you're leaning on a 4th-round draft pick
from
a
Toledo,
rookie he's the all-time leading rusher in Toledo history, but still, he's a rookie. He's a 4th-round draft pick. He's a guy that's unproven, has no NFL experience, and he's your number 1 running back right now. So I think a lot of people saw this team has some inexperience in the backfield. They have some inexperience on the outside. Tyreek Hill's the guy that's going to be Alex Smith's top target, is what a lot of people thought, and I think they were questioning that. And thus far, each of those pieces has improved tremendously from expectations. They have blown expectations out of the water. Nobody expected Kareem Hunt to be the top candidate for Rookie of the Year right now. The only candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year right now. Nobody really expected Alex Smith to throw the ball the way he has. I think the MVP of this Kansas City Chiefs team hasn't taken the field yet. The pick of Patrick Mahomes lit a fire under Alex Smith that I think has propelled him to make some of the throws that he has and take some of the chances that he has. The MVP of this Kansas City Chiefs team hasn't taken the field yet, and probably won't until garbage time of a game that they're up 30 in or next season.
I never thought about it like that. You said that, and I really honestly had a hard time even thinking about who you were talking about. That is amazing, and I think that you're absolutely right. Alex Smith was sitting there this preseason, kind of feeling that seat getting a little bit warmer, and I think you're just 100% right. He has taken a lot more chances this year that he would have never done in the past 2-3 years as a Kansas City Chief. And I think that is wonderful. I think Patrick Mahomes has done so much good for this team that a lot of people, including myself, didn't even realize until right now. And I think that is not even a hot take. That is just a good take. That is an amazing take. And I'm just going to go ahead and just props it to you right now. That was wonderful.
Well, thanks. So let's look ahead now to this matchup against Washington. This is a Washington team that has been on the verge for the last couple of years of being very good. Kirk Cousins has played a couple of really good seasons in a row. He's having an okay one this year as well. Solid defense. This is the third week in a row where we've played a team that's got a pretty good defense.
Yeah. The Chargers
front seven is very good. The Eagles front seven was very good.
Yep.
And the Washington defense isn't that bad either. So, this is a similar team to what we saw from the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a similar system. They don't have a similar quarterback, though. Kirk Cousins is much, much more liable to just chuck the ball wherever he can find a place to put it.
Absolutely.
And I think that works to the advantage of this Kansas City Chiefs defense. It's a very opportunistic defense. We saw that last week with 3 interceptions in the first quarter against Phillip Rivers. So you look at that matchup on Monday Night Football. It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a great atmosphere at Arrowhead Stadium. And so that should be a lot of fun for the Kansas City Chiefs, their fans, and even the Washington Redskins coming in and having a quality opponent from the AFC. So let's look a little bit farther ahead. Is this Alex Smith's last season in Kansas City?
I'm going to say no. If he continues to have the season he's having, I believe right now he's projected for like 37 touchdowns and no interceptions. I mean, that's going to change a lot. I mean, it's kind of hard not to throw an interception all year. But if he has such a great season, people have always been saying last year, he, like what we were saying, he doesn't take enough chances. We don't have enough big plays, blah, blah, blah. I'd rather have someone take a chance than not turn over the ball sort of thing. But if he proves all of the haters wrong this season, and people just absolutely shut their mouths with all the Alex Smith is not the Chiefs quarterback, not the one they need. I think he will be here for one more year just to get that that extra development under Patrick Mahomes' his belt. I'm gonna go. He has 2 years left in Kansas City, this one and next year, and then it's Mahomes time.
I think that this may be the last year we see Alex Smith in Kansas City. Next year is the next season is the last year of his contract. He becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2019. I think the Kansas City Chiefs brought in Patrick Mahomes to be a one-year replacement. I think they knew he had potential. I think they're grooming him under Alex Smith, and I think Alex Smith knows that. I think he realizes that his time is limited in Kansas City, and he wants to make the most out of the time that he's going to get. And I think that's a great way to look at it. I know a lot of quarterbacks would say, okay, if this is going to be my last year, then why am I doing this? No, Alex Smith says, if this is going to be my last year, then I'm going to make it a good one. And so I think this may be the last year we see Alex Smith in Kansas City. I think they will entertain trade options for him over the off season and could get some pretty big pieces out of him.
I was going to say, there's a lot of teams that could use him.
And I think it's a good time because there's 1 year left, so they would send him out as basically a 1 year, and then that would be the test year for Patrick Mahomes. And then all of a sudden, after that year, he's a free agent. If for some reason Patrick Mahomes doesn't work out, he's back on the market. So I think that would be an option. If he gets over the hump, if he gets to the top of the mountain, if he wins a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs, I say if you're Alex Smith, retire. He's
I mean, what else is there to do at that point?
He'll be 34 years old. He'll be heading into year number 14 in the league. Why not?
I can't think of a reason off the top of my head why not.
You're at the top of the mountain, and it would be a good time. But that's speculation. Alex Smith probably will not retire, even if he does win the Super Bowl. But that's a long ways down the road. It's just an interesting point to talk about. So I believe that is the end of our X106 podcast for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And once again, for Ryan Elliott
And
Evan Brown.
Oh,
That's
my
right.
bad. Thought we were doing that.
We'll let him tell you who he is.